Hello, how are you doing? I'm just off the back of watching the penultimate Pirates of the Caribbean motion picture on Stranger Tides, and what an enjoyable watch that was. It just further cements itself among one of my favourites. The opening starts with, in my opinion, what's one of the weaker openings of the franchise. But first with the positives, the music is absolutely gorgeous. It's incredibly mystical and immediately sets the scene and puts you in this world of mermaids and fantastical things. It really works well. The thing I find that's weakest about it is simply that the characters are just, they play such small roles and they don't get mentioned again and we don't see them again. It basically just tells us that the film's about the Fountain of Youth and that's it. However, we then go to the hilarious court scene where Jack is convicting Gibbs as he stole the clothes of the real judge. And then just into another brilliant scene, we get an incredible escape from Jack from the King's Room. It's just the most classic of Captain Jack Sparrow escapes. Whenever I think of Captain Jack Sparrow, this scene springs to mind. And following on from the last film where one of Lord Beckett's men says, "Do you think he plans it all out or just makes it up as he go along?" The fact that in this escape we can see him placing everything perfectly for him to make the escape is an answer to that question. It's just so perfect. And another thing that I find that's brilliant and just so in character is that he doesn't accept that people are calling him an imposter. Even though he's about to be convicted, he'll still say that he's the real Captain Jack. Because he wants to keep his reputation. He doesn't want anyone else to have that reputation. He wants everyone to know that it's him, regardless of consequences. I just think that's brilliant. And then, but we get reintroduced to Barbossa, in that resplendent outfit of his that he's recently acquired. And there's an incredibly intense moment where Barbossa discusses the sinking of the Black Pearl. And Jack just leaps on the table and he goes so dark, and his expressions go to that of those which we rarely see in this franchise. Which makes it seem all the more special because it just shows how Johnny Depp can switch in an instant. And I feel like the fact that it's a technique he employs so rarely makes it all the more special when he does. It's a fantastic exchange. Then, once Jack makes his escape, we soon get introduced to Angelica with a brilliant sword fight where it's so funny when they're mimicking each other's movements. And then the way he finds out it's Angelica is just by a simple foot move that no one else could possibly know other than Angelica. And then he just goes straight in for a kiss. It's the perfect introduction to that character. And then Barbossa eventually hunts down Gibbs to find out the whereabouts of Jack. And Gibbs does an absolute... the actor playing Gibbs does an absolute brilliant job here of taking control of the scene and not being intimidated by Barbossa at all, and just burns the map. And when Geoffrey Rush goes, "You fool," it's just a brilliant, brilliant scene. Two actors in fine form, there's nothing better. And then we find Jack being imprisoned on Blackbeard's ship. Before I go on to Blackbeard, I want to just praise the sets again. It's an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous ship, and it's only used for this one film. That's the crazy thing. They don't reuse the set, but it's one of my favourites of the franchise, definitely. And the way, again, I had a slight issue with the third film, with the pacing of the plot, where the middle part of the film is very slow and there's not a lot of substance to it. There's plenty of substance. It's almost rapid, actually, the way we get introduced to the whole plot so early on in the film, and then the rest of the film is just carrying it out. Yeah, we get the explanation of the fountain and of Blackbeard, and later on Angelica's motives to find the fountain for her father. But back onto Blackbeard's ship for a moment. We get introduced to the zombified crewmates, and I just think this is such a brilliant introduction to Blackbeard's character, because we're seeing the consequences of what he does to people. We're seeing his actions before the man himself, and it's absolutely terrifying. It's the perfect setup. And then when we get to the reveal of Ian McShane as Blackbeard, he's so intimidating. He's completely terrifying. And you are just immediately scared of him because you've seen what he can do already. And the power he holds with the sword and the way he can direct the ship and the sails, it's so perfect and brilliantly done. However, we then get the... sorry, I missed a scene I want to discuss, actually. Before we get introduced to Blackbeard, I'm all over the place. I've just got so much to say about this motion picture. It's brilliant. Before we get introduced to Blackbeard himself, we have the scene where Jack and the crewmates are discussing taking over the ship and forming that plan, where I just want to mention the brilliant side cast, because most of them are new characters, and the way they respond to Jack, they're just on the same wavelength as him instantly, and it's beautiful to watch. So funny, a great comedic scene. Then we get introduced to Blackbeard, as I've discussed, and then they get the brutal murder of the cook who watched this attempted takeover of the ship. The build-up is so intense, and the way the religious man is trying to convince Blackbeard not to do anything, just to see the good in people, they just instigate this sudden attack of the flamethrowers on the front of the ship, just engulfing that tiny little boat. It's brutal, pure evil, and then he just instantly directs them to kill him again. Sorry, to start the flamethrowers again, just to make sure that he's dead. Is absolutely evil. Then we get introduced to the mermaids and the mermaid attack, which is incredibly creepy. By the way, their piercing stares are perfect, and the direction is beautiful. When the mermaid starts singing to the pirate, and we see them all swimming underwater and gradually coming up to the surface as the mermaid joins in. And then the attack happens, and their hands power up through the boat, and it's a brilliant, brilliant scene. Then we get another brilliant Jack Sparrow moment of him jumping off the lighthouse, where we get one of the very few instances of some dodgy CGI. I have to say, they wanted to have this epic explosion and the typical diving off into the ocean just in front of the explosion scene, but it just felt a bit off. It didn't look quite as good as they wanted to. But as always, it's a brief scene. It's just something that stands out, and then you forget about it, so it's fine. But yeah, I just had to mention it. Then we move on to the chase, when they start looking for the chalices and hunting down the Fountain of Youth, where we get these gorgeous rainforest shots and helicopter shots of the rainforest. It's a brilliant location, just like in the third film. It really adds to it, and the sense of scale is impeccable. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous location. Then we get the iconic scene of Jack being forced to jump into the river from the cliff top, just when they throw the puppet and he starts screaming. And the puppet lands, but he's still screaming. It's absolutely brilliant. And then another hilarious scene of him stealing the chalices. It's just so simple, just making a noise so that the pirate looks the other way. He takes one cup, then as the guy looks to take the other cup, he'll take the one that he's not looking at, and then he'll just ends up with both cups. And then Barbos just knocks him out of the ground. There's just such a brilliant duo. They're so funny in this film. And then the religious man, I forget his name, you'll have to remind me. But it's heartbreaking when he causes the downfall of the mermaid that he fancies, because he causes the tear of joy that they eventually capture. It's absolutely brutal and just exemplifies Blackbeard's evil ways. But it's brilliant television. And just retouching on Barbossa's and Jack's chemistry, we get them tied up at the palm trees, and they're drinking from the leg of Barbossa as they're discussing the taking of the pearl. Geoffrey Rush's acting, he delivers this monologue so beautifully. I just have to praise him again. He's incredible, and I'm so glad they managed to get him for this role. No one could have done it better. And of course we get that another iconic escape. The escapes in this motion picture are the best in the franchise, because he swings the coconut around the palm tree nearby, catapults himself off, he flies through the air. It's an iconic shot, so funny. Oh, I just love it. And we also, once Jack does escape and gets reunited with Blackbeard and Angelica, we get to see his compassion, because one of his main conditions is firstly ensuring that Angelica is unharmed, and then that he gets his compass back. As soon as he gets his compass back, first of all, he sets Gibbs free, and then he gives Gibbs the compass, and then says, there you go, mate, that's for freedom. Wherever you want, this will take you there. It's just brilliant. And then they, of course, find the fountain with that brilliant special effect shot of the water droplet just falling upwards, and then Jack traces it along his fingers. It's brilliant effects. And we find we experience the hilarious luck of Jack just failing to work the spell properly, just banging these chalices together and nothing happening, and then him happening to utter the Spanish words on the mugs, and then the spell working, and him being swallowed up by the fountain by the sword. It's so funny. But brilliant special effects. So credit to the team for everyone involved in that. It looks great. Then of course we have the epic sword fight once the Spanish crew arrive as well. Just speaking of the Spanish crew, actually, does anyone else wish they had more of a chance to shine in this film? Because they get introduced at the start of the film, but they're kind of permanently ahead of the rest of the crews in the hunt for the fountain, and then they just appear at the end, and I feel like it should have more significance. It doesn't feel to me as climactic as maybe the people making the film hoped it would. I'm not sure, maybe it's just me, but I'd love to know what you think in that regard. I just wish they were more intimidating when they're confronting Blackbeard. And then we have the first death of Blackbeard, courtesy of Geoffrey Rush. God, this scene, the look Geoffrey Rush gives when he, first strikes the hand of Blackbeard to actually kill him with the poison from the sword, and then just for Barbossa's pleasure drives the sword into the heart of Blackbeard, as he said he would earlier in the motion picture. Oh, Geoffrey Rush delivers this scene perfectly. The expressions are golden. Oh, he steals the moment, absolutely. And then we get the contrasting comedy moment of Jack mixing up the chalices, where Blackbeard brutally believes that he's taken the years of life from his daughter, which is absolutely heartbreaking when he does that, but obviously fits the character. He's just evil. He is a bad man, and that's the end of it. But of course, Jack mixed up the chalices, so we get the actual death of Blackbeard, where, by the way, the special effects on this, absolutely horrific. They're brilliantly done, don't get me wrong, but it's just gruesome. And the way Angelica just watches the expressions of Penelope Cruz, sorry, her expressions are just excellent. They're perfect. She did a brilliant job in this film. Iconic character. And I know they're probably not going to, but if they were to do another film, she's a returning character that I would love to see again. And she has brilliant chemistry with Jack as well. When Jack leaves her on the island, their chemistry is just brilliant, and they have some hilarious dialogue. It's perfect. And you can tell that they just have a history. We don't need to have seen the history, we just know from the way they act in this film what sort of history they have. It's brilliantly done. And then before I skip to the final scene, doesn't Barbossa just fit Blackbeard's ship perfectly? I think better than the Pearl. I think of the Pearl as Jack's ship, and then seeing Barbossa at the end, with Blackbeard's sword as well directing the ship, it just works. He just fits that environment perfectly. And then, of course, we get the beautiful ending of Jack having quite an emotional speech, actually, explaining the pirate's ways and the reasons that he chose the pirate's life and the legacy he believes he might have. And he doesn't want to live forever, but his legacy might end up making him live forever just because he found the fountain. It's a beautiful, beautiful moment between him and Gibbs. It makes me so excited for the next film, honestly. Each ending of the film is so beautiful in this franchise that they just make you want to watch the next one instantly. But that will be tomorrow, I'm afraid. Because I need a break. Honestly, it's a big commitment watching all these films, let me tell you. But so enjoyable, and I hope you enjoyed listening to me ramble about them. One more to go, the final one, Salazar's Revenge, sorry. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are too. I'll see you then. Goodbye.